So when you see what's happening in Palestine, and you know, obviously you've stated that you're not really into the whole Abrahamic paradigm. What is your take on that?
My take is that Israel wants to take Gaza. Many of the leaders in Israel are saying turn it to a parking lot, turn it to glass. They want to build beachside condos. It's theirs and God gave it to them, and they're Amalek and they have to wipe them away and all this type of stuff. They say there's no innocence there. You know, they're not human. They're like animals. That's that sort of thing. So they want to take the land. And also, a huge part of Zionist end times prophecy is something called Edom is destroyed. And I don't know if you've seen the compilations. My pinned tweet has, I think, 1.5 million views. And it's a 10-minute compilation of rabbis talking about the prophesied destruction of Edom, which they interpret as the West, America, Europe, the New Rome, the Christian countries. So their end times prophecy, one of the most important ones, is Edom has to be destroyed. And they interpret Edom as Rome, as the Roman Empire. And that became the Holy Roman Empire and then morphed into Western civilization. So they believe they're in the fourth exile, the greatest exile of Edom under the fourth kingdom. And basically, what another thing I'm very vindicated about is the Gog and Magog war, the end times Armageddon war that everybody's been talking about, the apocalyptic wars. So right now, how we have Iran, Russia, and China versus like America, Europe, and NATO, like that is the battle lines. That is the puzzle pieces in place for this end times war. The Kabbalah rabbis for hundreds, if not 1,000 years, have been saying Iran, Russia is Gog that's going to go against Edom. And I think part of them taking out Gaza, they're going to know that this is going to inflame the Muslim world. And they're basically going to get us sucked into something where we're going to have to go to war with Iran, and that'll escalate with Russia. So that's why they're so brazen, and they're saying, you know, they'll do it alone. They don't care if the whole world's against them. And this is also why you see the narrative so much that America has betrayed Israel, and Biden funded $6 billion to Iran, and Biden's tying Netanyahu's hands, and now he's not sending the weapons anymore. So we're having a whole narrative that America is turning on Israel, that we're anti-Semitic, we're white supremacists, a Christian anti-Semitic country. And that's the narrative before the collapse. And haven't you been seeing everywhere, like framing America as the Roman Empire and that we're about to collapse?
Yes.
It's everywhere. It's like a huge meme, right? That is the Kabbalistic end times plan, is that we're destroyed according to the prophecies in this big war with the East versus the West. In Kabbalah, they call it Ishmael versus Esau. So it's Islam versus Christianity. And what a coincidence that the two offshoots of Judaism are the two most dominant religions in the world the last 1,700 years. And then there's an end times plan where they all have prophecies that where they're going to go to war with one another. And we're like right there. I think I've been saying since Trump lost that he's going to get back in with Kushner, and he's already saying Nikki Haley and Pompeo and all of the same Zionists, the
So
who's who of
crazy
Zionists.
to me. So crazy because they're so toxic, those two. You know, and that's a thing I want to get. There's a lot that I want to get into with you today. And I'm really into this conversation. I do have, you know, people in my life who are very Christian. I'm Christian. I know you have. At the end, we'll get into some of the stuff you want to talk about. That you asked me you wanted to talk about, and I think I should be open minded to all of it. Um,
If you like conspiracies, this is the greatest conspiracy, that
well,
open in our face conspiracy everywhere. Yeah.
so you know, my friend Tony a long time ago, a good friend of mine, talked about this before. I talked about some of my other podcasts and ended up not making it a cut, but for years would always tell me all these things that are about to happen through the Bible, right? And he would tell me, you know, he told me about, I remember in the like the mid 90s, you know, his group was telling me about towers are going to come down. And then he told me about the EU before the EU formed. And he's been telling me this stuff about lost tribes of Israel versus the pagans, which fits into kind of what you've been talking about right now. But he told me that from a Christian perspective. And, so as I watch this thing begin to happen and with everybody starting to call out Israel along the lines of what you were talking about, he told me that, that what will eventually happen is that the EU will step in and regulate Gaza. That will be it. And it will eventually get to the point, whether it's in our lifetime or not, that it will get to the point where it will be pagans versus lost tribes of Israel, and the lost tribes of Israel will be the UK, England, America, and Israel versus the pagans, which are a lot of the guys you just talked about. He also included Germany in with that group, that the Germans, and that's always really aligned with me with this kind of thing that last time we talked about, and I got a little freaked out on the internet because people were associating me with something that you had said, and at the time I wasn't understanding it. So, this is a big part of, why we're having this conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you called me faggot a couple times on the internet about things
I would never call you that word.
You called me something. And I'm not mad.
critical of the what's the guy's name? But Boncini, what's the guy that blames
Santos Bonacci?
Santos Bonacci? Yeah, I'm critical of that worldview.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't care. So I've been reading this book, and
I haven't read that one.
it's a great book. I mean, you probably know everything anyways that's in it, but it has all the receipts, and of course people are like, "Oh, it's been debunked," and stuff like that. And it fits into this thing that fits into what Tony had told me a long time ago. And that is that in my heart of hearts, I really do believe that the Nazis were the Bolsheviks of Germany, and that they were brought in to destroy it from the inside, kind of like what we're seeing right now in America with this social justice warrior progressive movement that is kind of trying to destroy all of our institutions and our history and flip everything. So when people see like a Black Mermaid, they're like, "Oh, dude, it's just a fictional character." And I go, "Yeah, by itself, it's really nothing. But when you put it all together, it's really about just completely and utterly changing all the data you have so you can't pass it on to your children. And what happens is your children and your grandchildren start at zero, which is so hard to build anything in life when you have nothing to start, no starting point." So it's a very dangerous conversation, but I remember when they were going off kind of on your episode that you did about how we were saying that Hitler was a Zionist and a big part of Israel, which at that time was a crazy thing to say, like in probably every world but your world, right?
I was just talking about this book, basically written by Edwin Black, who's Jewish, The Transfer Agreement. And InfoWars just did a post about this, the relationship that they had and how it benefited them. What's that one?
Well, again, this is the same book that I just showed you, but the reason I bring this up is because when you study Hitler and his relative with America during this time, we're both holding up books here.
I know. This is for the screenshot.
is when you study it, it's like FDR's good friends was best friends, was not best friends, but FDR's very close, if not best friend, was very tight with Hitler. And you study like all the U.S. corporations that helped not only build up the German military industrial complex, but were like basically like sugar daddying Hitler. They were people who were like the heads of the Federal Reserve of New York. It was like totally right there. So you start to study this, you start to go, what's at work here through this kind of. What was the group, the agreement, the Havana Agreement or something like that?
Yeah, that's the book I was just holding up, The Transfer Agreement.
Yes.
Dramatic story of the pact between the Third Reich and Jewish Palestine.
Yes. And how we start to see that, they made deals with Zionists to get them to Israel if they bought German goods and stuff like that. But there was the pact between them and the Nazis. And
it's real important if you read Herzl's writing. who is the modern day
Can you get
father
into
of
Herzl
Zionism.
for a little while so people a little bit so
Sure.
people can understand exactly what you're talking about?
Yeah, Herzl's one of the founding fathers of like modern Zionism, and he would write how they would use anti-Semitism to help create the state of Israel, and how because Europe is like inherently anti-Semitic, largely because of Christianity, that they could never live in those countries, that they needed to have their own nation, and that they would use the anti-Semitism to justify it and to get it, because so that he wrote that decades before it actually planned out and happened. But something's really important too. I was talking about Edom. In the Talmud, you go to Safaria website, like the official Talmudic database, and it says Germany was Edom. I've got clips of rabbis saying that before Germany existed, when it was just 300 tribes or whatever, that they were calling them Germania of Edom. And
Holy shit.
so here's John Hagee's book, and John Hagee is America's pastor. He's the most influential pastor in America with all of his high level political connections with Kufi. And his book is Earth's Last Empire, and it's got the eagle there representing the eagle of Edom. So the Roman Empire had eagle as a symbol. The Russians,
We have eagle. Yep.
we had it. The Russians, Germany had the eagle, and now America has the eagle, and that represents Esau and Edom. And when he says Earth's last empire, he means Kabbalistically the American empire, Edom, is going to be destroyed. The final Game of Thrones, and that's what the agenda is. That's what they want. And this isn't God's plan, supernatural hand carrying this out. This is a script. This is a blueprint that through their belief and following it and trying to hasten these things, and with the Christians and the Muslims also participating and playing their role as Esau and Ishmael, and by them believing in their end times prophecies that all converge, both Islam and Christianity believe that Jesus is a Messiah that's going to return to defeat the Antichrist. And if that's what you believe, that means predictive programming when the Antichrist comes, so it's all predicated on the Judaist end times prophecies, returning to the land of Israel, rebuilding their temple, anointing a Messiah, and having worldwide domination, the mark of the beast, basically. So all of that has to happen for Christian and Muslim prophecies to be fulfilled. So in a way, it's like they don't want it to happen, but it's God's plan and it has to happen, and it must unfold at some point. So in a way, they do want it to happen because Jesus will never return if it doesn't.
Well, that is the big thing going on right now with Netanyahu, and like this kind of belief that he was put in place to push this end times prophecy together, and he seems to be like trying to okay, let's let's kick this into gear. It's not happening quick enough, and this old guard seems to be passing. And they're like, hey, dude, like, I don't got a lot of these days left. When's this thing? I've dedicated my whole life to this. When is this thing going to happen? And it seems to be like, let's jack it up right now.
You're talking about his famous clip of him meeting the Rebbe, the Chabad Lubavitch Rebbe. He goes, do more to hasten the Messiah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be completely psychotic to me. So, these again are even though today there are people that will hear this and automatically yell anti-Semitism about it, which is not true at all. I don't, me personally, my girlfriend's Jewish. I love her family, all that stuff. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just, when you have people conspiring to make certain things happen, and I just see people getting slaughtered. And the people who were like just kowtowing to George Floyd and being like, oh my God, we gotta oh my God, how can we be this? What happened to our humanity? And then they're just turning around and just completely, allowing children to get beheaded and acting like it's a proper response to October 7th.
Defending themselves. They're slaughtering Palestinian children and acting like it's a second Holocaust, that they're being Holocausted. And isn't that the narrative everywhere, that it 100%. Could happen here? That's Greenblatt's book. They're calling America the Fourth Reich. They're talking, the rise in Christian nationalism and anti-Semitism on the college campuses. This is the narrative that we saw also before in Germany, before they were destroyed. It's the template of the Purim story, where Haman and the king of Persia were going to kill all of the ancient Hebrews or Israelites. I don't know how you would classify them in that story. And then Mordecai and Esther, they did something with the king, and then they were able to win and then slaughter the Persians. So it's the same idea. And to take it back to Netanyahu and the Rebbe, when he first got into power, he'd go visit the Rebbe, like all the political leaders in Israel do. But Netanyahu was also crowned. That people can Google Netanyahu crowned by a rabbi. He was a Chabad rabbi. Australian diamond tycoon helped Netanyahu get into power. And just recently, Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, the one that got busted with Epstein and was right there with Netanyahu, like, creating the narrative of 9/11. Ehud Barak, just a couple of weeks ago, said in an interview that Netanyahu is controlled and what was the word? Slave. He's a slave to the radical rabbis that want to ignite the Middle East and usher in the Messiah. Even the former prime minister of Israel, who's known Netanyahu for decades, says this is who Netanyahu's in with. And then Netanyahu got out of power. He's facing all this criminal stuff. He gets back into power, most extreme Zionist cabinet he's ever had. And the Sanhedrin minted a coin. They did the Third Temple coin with Trump and King Cyrus. And then they also did a coin called the Sons of Light and the Sons of Darkness coin with Trump and Netanyahu on it in 2020. As soon as October 6th happened, Netanyahu and the head spokesperson of the IDF started calling this the War of Sons of Light versus the Sons of Darkness, which is related to Gog and Magog in the end times. So it's like Netanyahu and Trump, Kushner right there, all the puzzle pieces in place. I think they're going to finish Gaza, take Gaza, and then following the end times Antichrist script, they're going to have Trump and Kushner have a peace deal, a covenant with West Bank to make up for what happened in Gaza. And then, because, Kushner, it's like deal of the century. Kushner's the genius that's going to make peace in the Middle East. Trump and Kushner have been hyping that up so much that I see it as like foreshadowing, and like that's the direction when he gets back in. The only thing that Israel can do to save face, Trump was just at the UFC fight last night, and Khabib, the Muslim from Russia, says, when you get in, you got to stop the end in war in Palestine. He says, yeah, I'm going to do it. I think they're going to win.
You think Trump's going to win? Or Israel's going to win? Is that
I'm saying Trump's going to win?
Okay.
Get back in with Kushner. All these end times Christian Zionists like Pompeo, Nikki Haley, Lindsey Graham, Ron DeSantis, all of them basically. And they're gonna have this. They're gonna hype this big peace deal. It's gonna collapse. Something's gonna go wrong, and then there's gonna be the Gog and Magog war. That's what I think in the next few years is gonna happen. The Sons of Light and Sons of Darkness war. The same Temple Institute also made the coin of Trump in the Abraham Accords as well. And on the coin, the Sons of Light and Sons of Darkness is a book, a scroll found in Qumran Dead Sea Scrolls. And they have a museum in Israel with the light and dark symbolism is in the architecture, and it's Kabbalistic. The light is the divine sparks of light of the Jewish souls, and the darkness is the shattered vessels of the Kelipah, which represents the souls of the Gentiles who come from the Sitra Achra, the evil other side, the darkness. Edom and Esau in the west is the dark, and Jerusalem is the light. In the Talmud, it says, but that before Jerusalem can rise up and have their messianic age, Rome or Edom has to fall. The two nations cannot coexist. It's this dualism of the twins of Jacob and Esau, representing Christianity and Judaism, or Rome and Jerusalem, and that's the dialectic.
So let me ask you something. So Trump in this equation represents the darkness,
the Messiah of Edom. Yes.
So, and when do you think they did? Like, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, but at what point did they decide he was the guy who's going to play that role?
It seems like he's been groomed for decades. He was getting top Kabbalistic Tree of Life awards in the early 80s. I feel like it might have even been with his dad before him. His dad was close friends with Netanyahu in the 80s. His dad was investing in Israeli bonds very early on in Israel's history. He was donating land to build Chabad synagogues as well. But it's even weirder. Trump is born. You can look this up, guys. Trump is born on a solar eclipse. And he's he's been talking about peace and all of this weird predictive programming stuff with Trump for a long time. So I think, have you seen the new Dune? Dune 1 and
No,
2?
that's the next thing I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna
You
watch
gotta
that
watch
probably
Dune,
tonight.
dude.
Yeah,
It's so cool.
it's one movie everyone's like, that's I wish I would have seen it in the movie theater. I have a big TV, so I mean I'm gonna be able to watch, but I wish I would have saw it in the movie theater. But yeah, everyone says it's like a masterpiece.
Dude, it's so good. It's like a no more news movie because like it's not really a spoiler alert. It's in the first movie and throughout the second. But the idea is that there's this cult of women that are pulling the strings behind the empire, and they're planting messianic prophecies on different planets to control people and to prime them and condition them to accept a leader or wait for a leader. So the whole movie, the plot is all about fake messianic prophecies to control people. It's right up my alley. But also they have this idea where there's bloodlines and they have different candidates for certain messianic roles. So it's like, I think maybe Trump wasn't the only one, but he was one of the people that they were grooming, and he's obviously been the one that's, I mean,
Stuck. Like,
have you ever seen somebody more famous than Trump? He's the most hated and the most loved person in the world. It's so weird. He's like an evil, sinful guy, but the more that they come after him, the more support and love he gets. There's like a messianic cult vibe around Trump with the QAnon people and the MAGA prophets all over the internet. It really is like a cult-like phenomenon. The rabbis and the Christian Zionists have been calling him like a messianic leader, the new King David, the Cyrus, all of these messianic archetypes into Trump.
it is of my belief October 7th was a false flag event to bring on a lot of the stuff that we're seeing right now. Um, is that your belief? And there's this whole narrative before you answer that a lot of this kicks off. What we're being told is because the red heifers are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Fat redheads are headed to Israel. Where are the fat redheads right now? Are they still alive? Have they been? Have we fulfilled some prophecies here? Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
They have to wait until the cows are 3 years old, and they have to be without blemish. So every single hair has to be red, no birthmarks or anything. There's Christians in Texas that are trying to selectively breed these red heifers and shipped a few of them to Israel.
Dude. Unbelievable.
It's so wacky. And why before they can rebuild the temple, they believe they have to purify the priests and purify the land by burning the red heifers to ashes, mixing it with a few other ingredients, and then sprinkling it around so it's purified that they can rebuild the temple. And October 7th being a setup, I mean, it's well known now that Israel helped start Hamas, that Netanyahu strategy for years was to continue propping up Hamas, to ruin any chances of a two-state solution, to have this terroristic threat that justifies, the ongoing occupation. But here's listen to this. This is a hot scoop. I covered this right after it happened too. And then the rabbis started doing their videos confirming with what I said. October 7th was the morning after the Jewish holiday Sukkot, which is a 7-day holiday where in the ancient times they would sacrifice 70 bulls on the temple. And the 70 bulls represent the 70 nations, so all of the non-Jewish world. And in Gog and Magog, they believe it's 35 and 35. Esau and Ishmael, 35 nations going to war with one another. And the gematria, the numerology of Gog and Magog also equals Sukkot as well. So having that happen the morning after that holiday that's so symbolic for the end times war. Also, another connection is I've got clip after clip of rabbis saying that 9/11 was predicted in the Zohar. And they cite, have you heard that one before?
No.
Yeah,
I know that, like I said, like earlier, that like in the mid 90s, early to mid 90s, I met with like my buddy who got very deep is still deep into Christianity, and his church had a band and they were singing about the towers falling in the mid 90s.
Really?
Yeah, it was like crazy to watch.
Trump basically predicted a big bin Laden attack. Netanyahu also predicted it and like threatened it. And I've got clips of rabbis claiming top Hasidic rabbis from Israel came and a few weeks before 9/11 said, say bye-bye to those buildings. Like that's a wild thing to lie about if he's making it up. But it is in the Zohar, Chabad's website, chabad.org. Google it, 9/11 Zohar. They have a whole article about how, the Zohar predicted that this would happen and that this would start the downfall of Edom. What the Zohar says is that 2 big buildings in the biggest city of Edom, or America, New York, will be destroyed, will collapse, and then a great hall also. So like the Pentagon. And this will be the start of the third Gog and Magog, the third world war of Esau versus Ishmael, the clash of civilizations of Christianity and Islam.